She tilted her head and smiled softly and left his mind racing. Claire moved with quiet steps through the old cargo bay of the small human outpost on the rim of a calm blue. Moonch worked night watch and kept the lights low to save power the moon. Sky glowed like frost, and the metal walls hummed like a slow march. Liked the silence because it let her think she'd come out this far, to start again, and to help build a place for people who had little or nothing. She lifted a crate and set it down and checked the seal with careful hands. A soft chime rose at the airlock, not a ship alarm, and not a fault tonite sounded. Like a guest asking to enter, Claire looked at the old camera and saw a figure in a pale travel suit. Figure stood still and waited, and the moonlight poured around her like fog. Claire opened the inner door, and the figure stepped in and stopped. It was tall and slight, and her eyes were silver like rainwater over stones, breathed in slow, and took off her hood. And her hair fell like a river of dusk. "Me name is Arali," she said in a voice that had a soft echo as if the air itself. "Listen, Eddie, come in peace and need a place to rest." Claire nodded and led her to a bench by the wall. Heaters poured warm water into a tin cup and set it down, recupped the steam with both hands, and closed her eyes like the warmth was a homu. Looked far from home. Claire sedarily opened her eyes and tilted her head and smiled so gentle that the room felt lighter. Tilted her head, smiled softly, and left his mind racing. Except it was her heart that ran and not his. It felt like a storm made of light had touched her and then moved on, but left a glow in its path. Claire had seen many kinds of travelers, had not seen eyes like that before, silver as calm water and bright with patience. "What brings you here?" Claire asked. Darlie took a slow breathy seek. "A human," she said, "a human who does not turn away from Fyra, human who stands with open hands and not with a raised stone." Claire smiled with one side of her mouth. "He found a whole outpost of those," she said. Arali shook her head with a small motiono. She said, "I seek one human in truth." Claire sat down across from her, and Wadadero looked at her hands. "Me world is in a long winter," she said, "not of ice, but of hearts are many, and we live long lives, and we talk with our minds and our voice for ages. We grew in wisdom and in art, but we forgot how to stand when the wind rose, learned to flow around every hard thing, and we called it harmony. Forgot how to be strong and kind at the same timino. A shadow stirs along the old paths between stars. It feeds on the habit of silence. Fear comes, our people bow and hope the storm will pass. The storm grows when we need a lesson that our songs do not hold. Any more, we need a human to stand in the middle of our square and show a way that is both brave and warm." Claire rubbed her thumb along the edge of the tin cup. A human?" she asked. Arlie smiled with a small curve like moonlight at the edge of a lake-o. "Remember fire and bread and neighbors." She said, "You fail and try again, you argue, and then cook for each other. Your ships are patched and your boots are dusty, and you carry hope like a tool on your belt. Need that Memora." Claire looked at the low lights and the bay floor and the simple crates of grange. Thought of the faces in the bunk rooms, in the garden dome, and the clinic where Mia worked. Latesh thought of the way they had built a place from scrap and stubborn hands. "When did this start?" Claire asked. Darlie looked to the door as if she could see through it, and across the cold plain. "It started long before me," she said, "but the shadow moved closer last season, and our councils did nothing, and our patrols drifted. Then a small school was to Keno one, raised a hand to sang, and we wept and we waited. Told ourselves that nothing good comes from force." Claire felt the words like sparks under her skin. Should seen harm that came from force without love, should also seen harm that came from love without force. Stadu said, "You need one human," she said. Array nodded ease, and the council of elders named a price who do not trade. To do not trade, Faust and human must live among us for a span of seasons, and teach by example, and by story, and by simple action. Each day no speeches are neededly a life lived in the open, where all can. Claire looked at her hands and saw the small scars of work in the line of a burn from a hot pipe last month's. Thought of the garden dome and the kids who ran in circles, and the old radio that Kate had fixed with stubborn Joyce. Thought of fear like a fog, and of a hand that reaches through it and holds another hand and does Not let go. She felt the pull of the road like she had when she was a teen and had left a broken town and walked until the sky looked. Numia can run the clinic and Kate can take my watch for a while, she said to herself. Mabe. This is what she had. Come here to find a door that opens to a larger roomerall. I watched her with eyes that saw the small turns inside, a human heart tilted. Her head again, and this time the smile held a spark like a match in a dark shadow, are already teaching me. She said humans choose in the middle of the story, and not only at the end. Claire laughed a short, warm sound, pulled on her jacket, and clipped her drive tag to the collar. If we go. We go now, she said. Shadow does not pause for any wienerly studi. Have a small ship and a long path, she said. Claire left a note for Mia and Kate, and for Laura at the garden. She wrote that she would be back, and that the outposts knew what to do, because that was the truth. People knew what to do when they trusted one another. They walked to the pad, and the moon air lay cold and thin on their cheeks. Ship looked like a drop of night, with a silver seam inside. It hummed like a whispering choir. Raleigh set a course, and the small ship rose, and the blue moon fell. Away stars opened like windows. The across a lane where freighters crawledeth, he passed a beacon with a slow pulse that said hello in an old human. Claire watched the screen as a faint map. Grush saw the region where roots bent around a dark ripple like a knot in the fabric of spaces, that the shadow she Ascites Arali Sadit is not a thing with teeth, it is a habit that eats. Courage is the shrug that says somebody else will stand. Today Claire thought of the school and felt her jaw set when they reached a rally world. The ship slid into a sky, the color of a quiet river. City below was made of smooth towers like shells and bridges like laceith. Streets were clean, and the air was full of soft music, and no one looked at anyone. Furlungarali guided the ship to a square with trees that glowed from within like lanterns. People gathered, but stood apart as if each person was on a small. Alandarali spoke to an elder with hair like silver grass and a robe the color of fog. Elder looked at Claire with empty courtesy and said, "Welcome, traveler," and then let his gaze drift away. Claire felt a slow heat in her chest, stepped into the square and climbed onto a stone bench and lifted her hands the way she did when she taught kids how to fix a sill. "Hello," she said with a voice like she used in the bay when the fans were loud. "We're going to cook." Crowd blinked as if a new color had been poured into their ice. Claire unpacked a small stove from the ship, and a pot and dried beans and tomatoes and salt and a bag of spice that Kate called Camp Maggie. She asked the children to bring water and the teens to bring wood and the elders to tell where the wind blew at night in this square. Yet first they only watch it then. A boy stepped forward with a jar of rain. A teen girl followed with a bundle of dry reeds. An older man raised a hand toward the east and said the breeze comes from there when the moon is high. Claire thanked each one with the same warm nod, washed the beans and set the pot and fed the small flame with courage. She asked for stories about times, and the city had worked as one handed. First the answers were small and shy. Then a woman told of when a bridge had cracked and neighbors had formed a line to carry stone. A saw man said he had once shared his tools with a stranger, and the stranger had fixed 10 roofs. Claire listened and smiled and asked for more. By the time the stew began to smell like home, the square had drawn close. People stood shoulder to shoulder. They laughed at small mistakes and then fixed them. Some in sang a tune without words, and others hummed the lineth. Loud. Elder returned and watched and did not drift away this time. Wind bowls were past. A whisper moved through the crowd like dawn wind through grassies. This how it starts. Someone sad. Claire wiped her hands on a cloth and stood on the bench. Again it starts when a person steps forward. She sat it. Starts when a hand lifts instead of pointing it. Starts when we share heat and food and stories and work, and we do it even when fear whispers in the aurorally. Stood beside her and raised her silver eyes to the squarethus as the lesson. "Wila," she said. "Courage is not a shout, it is a steady flame that warms and lights." The wafer days. Claire walked the city and started small fires of Axiona. Clinic team formed and learned to treat simple wounds. A patrol walked the old paths at dusk and waved to neighbors. A group of kids painted signs that said, "Here we help," and "Here we share tools," and "Here we sing at sunset." In each square she cooked a pot and asked for stories and work and simple vows. Stand together, we look after the small. We face the shadow with open eyes, and joined hands. Shadow felt the warmth and drew back from the edges like mist from a morning Tsunoni night. The elder who had looked away came to Claire with his robe in his hands. Like a man who had taken off his title and kept only his name. "Thank you," he said. He did not know how hungry we were for this. Claire smiled and shook her head. "You fed yourselves." She said he only lit the first match.